Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? It is your boy right here, MMA Reloaded. You know what time it is, folks. It is time once again to jump on the mic. And today, folks, I have a real special show, but I'm going to let him tell you, yeah? And we will introduce him when he comes on the air. It is a very special show with a very special announcement to go with it, folks. So stay tuned. Let's do the particulars. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are just about set, just about ready to go live. Episode 27 of MMA Reloaded on the mic, folks, is with Almighty Fighting Championship promoter Ray Thompson. So, we're going to just get on that right now, and he will introduce himself to you. Hey, Ray.
Hiya, mate. You okay?
Yeah, how's it going, mate? You good?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. It's nice to finally speak to you.
Oh, mate, trust me, I was just about to say after about 5-6 years of doing the game together, we finally get to chat one on face to face. So, no, mate, it's a pleasure. Of course, I got tremendous respect for you, and
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, mate. That means a lot.
it's no problem at all, mate. And of course, the reason I have you on the show today is because Almighty Fighting Championships is back this year, starting August the 7th. And for those fans who don't know what Almighty Fighting Championships is or how it started, tell us a bit about the promotion, mate, and how you began, how it all started for you.
So, Almighty Fighting Championship is what I class as a UK regional show. We've been running for about 4 to 5 years. Obviously, we've not been running for the last year because of the pandemic. To date, we've done 17 shows. It was actually myself and a chap called Stephen Mayer who started the show. So our backstory is quite interesting because I was running a podcast, a bit like what you're doing now. He was running a clothing brand, and he sponsored a few fighters that were doing quite well on the UK scene. And he was down with Jack Mason at Jack Mason's gym in London. And some of the fighters he sponsored were at the time Sean Carter and Arnold Allen. Obviously, Arnold Allen's in UFC now, but this was before the UFC. And they were kind of putting Steve through his paces, putting him through a shark tank, and kind of just toying with him really, because Steve isn't someone who trains regularly, and they were just kind of playfully beating him up, but putting him in his place. And Steve just made a statement on Facebook saying he'd love to get in and compete against somebody who doesn't train, but would train for this fight. So I saw the statement. I've always been someone who's out of shape, and I thought I'd love a challenge. So I commented and said, yeah, I'd be up for that. So we started talking to each other. We set up a fight at Ellen Road in Leeds a few years back on a show called Caged Fighter Leeds, I think it was called. So I put myself through a training camp, went for 20 weeks, lost 5 stone in 20 weeks, stepped into the cage. Me and him fought, 3-round decision. I won round 2, but he won rounds 1 and 3, so he got the decision. And then shortly after that, I moved up north to Bridlington, and without realising it, I'd moved within half an hour of him. He was living in Scarborough. So I reached out to him and said, do you fancy setting up a show? And he said, yeah, that'd be great. So, and then we started talking. His clothing brand was called Almighty Fightwear.
Okay.
So I said, Almighty's a good name. Why don't we call it Almighty Fighting Championship? And we went from there. And interestingly, if you notice, Arnold's nickname is Arnold Almighty Allen.
Yes.
That came from Steve. Steve gave him the nickname because Steve was one of his early sponsors.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's how the show started. So we did the very first show. We obviously had our teething problems, but overall, looking back, the show didn't do very well on that night, particularly with the way we ran it. But we didn't know what we were doing. But we still got a lot of praise for the show, for it being our first show, and we went from strength to strength. And we've built up a really big reputation as being a show that puts on a good standard of fights. We're easy to work with. We run really well on the night, and we've just gone from there. Really, we've started off in Yorkshire, we've expanded to Liverpool, and now for the first time, I've got a show booked in Newcastle, and I've also got a show booked in Coventry as well. Coventry's where I'm from and where I'm currently living, so it'd be nice to do something local as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, and of course that Coventry support is going to be massive for you, mate, as well, because you get quite a good response locally, as whenever you post on Facebook, people sort of recognize who Ray Thompson is, and
I don't know about that, but it'll be nice anyway. It'll be nice to do something local.
Definitely, mate. And Liverpool, Newcastle, and of course Barnsley on August the 7th. If I'm not wrong.
That's right.
So for when you choose those venues, and you chose to do it in Barnsley, and you chose to do it in Newcastle, and you chose to do it in Liverpool, what was the thought process behind choosing those venues? Was it quite a long thought process because of the restrictions and COVID, or was it, did you have it set out beforehand?
So when we first started, we were in Yorkshire and we did the shows in Leeds, and we moved around Yorkshire a little bit. We didn't have great success with the venues in Leeds. They were quite difficult to work with. So we moved over to the Barbican in York, which is quite a well-known venue because it's where they have the snooker. But it was a lovely venue, but it was very expensive, and we just couldn't keep up with it really. So we made a decision to move away from that one, and looked around. And we'd worked with gyms in South Yorkshire anyway, Barnsley, Doncaster. So going that way made sense. We'd heard about the Metrodome, and Steve actually was the one that went and met them. And then Steve left the company, because it's just me now, and he left the company before we got to do the first show. So I went and met them there, and we did the first show there, and it was absolutely amazing. So that was the kind of history as to why Metrodome. And the show was so good, and the venue was so easy to work with, and was so eager to work with us and to look after us, if you like. That's why we've gone back. Liverpool. So there was already a show in Liverpool, which was basically, it used to be called Shinobi, but it become a Cage Warriors Academy show. Okay. And the chap doing that was somebody I got on really well with. He was a really nice guy. I spoke to him quite a bit. And he was just someone that was just very, we'd strung up a little bit of a relationship. We're getting on really well. And he kind of announced that he wasn't going to be doing any more shows in Liverpool. And because we'd worked with quite a lot of Liverpool gyms already, and because Liverpool is, if you look at the history of European fighters in the UFC, this is a stat that I don't know if you know this, but I've heard this stat quite a few times. Yeah. Liverpool is the city that's provided the most UFC fighters throughout Europe.
Wow.
Which is absolutely crazy. If you look throughout the history, that's God's honest truth. So if you look at throughout the history, you go back as far as Terry Etim, Paul Sass, and then you've got the current lot that are in, Molly McCann, Chris Fishgold, obviously Paddy Pimblett's just signed, Darren Till, all from Liverpool. So Liverpool's got a long history. Paul Kelly. Liverpool's got a long history of UFC. So there's a massive, massive following, MMA following in Liverpool. There's some really, really high quality gyms in Liverpool. Next Generation, Hammer, Aspire, the MMA Academy. They're the main four that we work with. So there's so much. Sorry, somebody's trying to ring me on something. Let me just cut that off.
Sorry.
There's so much history in that city. So
Yeah.
that's why when I realised that he wasn't going to be doing shows anymore, I messaged him and said, look, if you're not going to be doing shows anymore, would you mind if I brought, because I didn't want to tread on anyone's toes. I've got a lot of respect for him. So I said, I'd love to bring Almighty to Liverpool. Would you mind if I did? And he didn't get back to me straight away. He left it for a little bit. And then he finally come back to me and said, look, I've got no plans to do any more shows. I said, if you want to come over here, that's absolutely fine. I've got no problem with it. And if you want, I'll put you in contact with the venue I was using. And he basically put me in contact with the guy. He put a good word in for me. And then we went from there. So, and then with Newcastle, I was looking to do shows all over the country. I was looking at different places and different locations. And Newcastle was somewhere that appealed to me because we work with quite a lot of Northeast gyms already. The main ones that I've worked with and built up a good relationship with over the years is Dungeon MMA, SBG Bishop Auckland, which of course is Davey Grant's gym, who was just coming off a fantastic fight over the weekend where he won Fight of the Night. He's won 3 bonuses in a row, that guy. He's just an amazing fighter. Yeah, absolutely amazing. And we work with other gyms as well. Tap Out, Knockout, which are based in Carlisle, Viper MMA. So it just made sense. I wanted to go up north because we'd had such. I mean, when these gyms come down to us as well, so they're traveling from up north to say Yorkshire, they're bringing mass fans with them. So I know if they're local, they're going to bring even more. So yeah, that's another reason why I wanted to go up and do Northeast. And we've had a great response. I mean, we just announced the pro card for the Northeast card, the Newcastle card, and it's had a great response. There's some really good fights on there, and obviously I'm excited for them. I put those fights together myself, so it's great to see. It was great to see the positive response for them as well.
And just on that, and how many fights you have, because each card looks to be absolutely stacked, like 20 plus fights on each show, and matching up all those yourself. I mean, just to have those amount of fights on the card, Ray, what does that mean to you? And of course, giving those fighters the opportunity after the pandemic, after the prime of the pandemic, let's say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reason we put a lot of fights on is because it's the fighters that sell the tickets. So, it's basic. The more fighters we have on, the more tickets we're likely to sell. So I obviously try and match good fights, but fights where we can promote and get some people through the door. I normally aim for around 30 fights each show, and we start at 3:30 and we finish at 11. That's what I normally aim for. But we all know, it happens at the highest level. You always have injuries and pull-outs and dropouts. So you kind of deal with them as they come along. I mean, I've had a show before which has had 25 fights and then ended up with 12. So you have to you book a lot because you're going to lose them along the way. And every now and then, if you don't, that's a bonus. But you've got to be prepared for that. I mean, there's I don't want to just say there's quite a few good shows around the UK. I mean, obviously, I like to put ourselves in that category. There is other good shows out there, and they're providing a platform for the UK MMA scene for the pros and the amateurs. But we're just doing our bit as well and putting on the best show that we can. I mean, one of the things that surprised me since doing what I'm doing now is the standard of the amateurs in this country. I mean, if you don't watch a lot of the UK scene, you could watch the fights and not realise they're amateur fights. You could think they were pro fights because they're that good. And I'll be honest, I get a lot of the time I get more excited for the amateur fights on the card than I do the pro fights because there's so much. A lot of these guys are so young. They're the future. I mean, they're going to go on to big things, and see them at the start of their journey. And one of the fights we've got lined up for Barnsley is for the featherweight title. It's George Staines and Leon McCracken, and I think they're the two best pound for pound fighters at the moment on the amateur scene in the UK. So to get that fight on our show, I'm over the moon because they're both amazing fighters. I mean, if you get a chance to go and watch any of their footage, I mean, George Staines has just come out of nowhere. He was training at a gym in Hull, and it's a great gym, but they're very much under the radar. They're not very high profile, and he just was flying through. He was doing really, really well on Almighty, and I just think because he was just on Almighty, he was under the radar. People weren't really noticing him. Then he had a massive win over one of the big fighters from Aspire in Liverpool, and that's just kind of skyrocketed him. And now he's facing this lad's teammate, so it's going to be a real good fight with a little bit of history to it as well.
And George Staines will come into that fight defending champion. Am I correct?
That's
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, he's defending his title against Leo McCracken.
I mean, I saw when you posted the fight card up here. I straight away I went to go find him on social media and I was so impressed with his record and like his demeanor, the way he comes across. So I was looking to actually set up an interview with him as well and get
he's
him
a
on.
lovely lad. He's very, very softly spoken. He's not what you'd expect because he's an absolute animal in the cage. But outside the cage, he's just a real nice lad.
Yeah, and I mean that's the trick, really, isn't it, Ray? I mean, soft spoken but hard hitting.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got some slick submissions as well.
Oh yeah. I saw some of the footage. When we look at the past year and a half, and of course it was so painful. It must have been as frustrating as anything anyone has ever experienced. But
yeah, it's been horrible. I mean, obviously, I think everyone's been impacted different ways, and we've all lost something or the ability to do something that we love. And for me, it's been mixed martial arts. Luckily, the UFC's still been going, and obviously, I know that that's helped because I've had that to look forward to, most weekends, and some of the fight cards have been amazing. As you know, I run fantasy games, so that's something that I enjoy doing. I know you're part of it, a former champ, as we like to say. So I enjoy doing them, and that's kept me going as well. But at the end of the day, Almighty Fighting Championship is a massive part of my life. It's something I love to do. I love all the interaction. I love the setting up before. I love the thrill of the night, the accolades after the night when it's gone well, and I've missed that massively. I mean, the last show we did in February last year we had 28 fights at the Metrodome. We had a big crowd. We did good numbers. The fights were fantastic. We had some real big moments of the night. We're one of the only shows as well to be doing the amount of bonuses that we do, bonus payments on the night. We did. I mean, that night we paid out, I think it was about £800 or £900 in bonuses to the amateur fighters, or 9 of them received £100 each. So we're one of the only shows, I believe, in the UK to be doing that. And we did that night, and it's great to be able to give back. But then to have all that taken away, it was horrible. It really was. The amount I had all these great ideas that I couldn't do. So it was hard.
And I guess I know you said, you're used to having 25, 30 fights on a card. But I guess having it now means a lot more to the fighters and of course to yourself, because coming off such a shit pandemic. And of course it means a lot more to them because it's a way for them to get back into the swing and into action, and it's a chance for yourself and Stephen to get back into the action as well. So on that base and being able to put on Almighty Fighting Championships again, Ray, how do you feel, and how do you feel the fact that you have 5 great shows lined up, and you have all these fights lined up? How do you feel?
I'm buzzing. I just can't wait to get going again. I mean, I'm actually going to be at a show this weekend. I'm going to be commentating on Golden Ticket, which is based in Wolverhampton. I've worked with them before. Ironically, the guy who does the match in there, Dan Casale, he fought on our very first show, so I've got a real good relationship with them. And they're another show I would highly recommend. Mm-hmm. They do. I put them similar to us. They put on good fights. They put on fights that fans want to see. So I'm looking forward to going back to a live UK show again. So I'll be there this Saturday for that. See how that goes. But I just can't wait to get back. I mean, I've put all these fights together, and because of the way I am, and because I do love what I do. So when I put these fights together, I put on fights that I like to watch. So I'll be there on the Saturday night on the 7th of August, trying to watch as many of the fights as I can, as well as running around fixing whatever needs fixing on the night. Normally, things tend to run quite well. I've got good staff, so. But obviously, if there's anything that pops up I need to deal with, then I will. But where possible, I'll sit and watch as much of the fights, as many of the fights as I can. Because when you put that much time and effort into building the fights and matching the fights, you do like to see how they play out.
Yeah. As the promoter, that's sort of the frustration with the job, really, I mean, you can't really get to enjoy what you want to enjoy, what you really put together, and sort of see it in its entirety because you're running around all the time, And I guess, and it's funny you mentioned Golden Ticket because one of the fighters fighting for the bantamweight championship, Moser Beer, is actually going to be on my show tomorrow.
Yeah, I know
So
Mo.
yeah, so there's a lot of hype around him. And he's actually a really good lad. So now I was actually interested. You actually mentioned that show. I'll be tuning in for that 100%.
I would highly recommend that anyone who likes UK MMA tune in for that show, because I've been to a few of their shows and I've never ever been to a bad show that they've done. Every show they've done has been high quality, and some of the moments they have on the I've had on the show in the past has just been. I mean, yeah, I mean, I've commentated on their last few, but they are a brilliant show. They do everything right. They're good guys that are behind the scenes as well. So if I wasn't there, if I wasn't commentating, I'd have brought a ticket and gone anyway.
Yeah, oh, definitely,
Yeah, there's
definitely.
no doubt.
Yeah. I mean, for those types of shows, it's worth making the trip up. You know, it's funny because when you said about amateur, the amateur scene, that was actually one of my questions to you. I was actually going to ask because not only in on the UK scene, but globally, amateurs are starting to become a lot more mainstream now. You know, they're starting to be televised a lot more and get a lot more publicity than I think they're probably used to. Um, how do you how does that feel? You know, what I mean? And why is it so important to showcase young fighters on the amateur scene? You know, on not only on UK shows but just in general. Why is it important for promoters to showcase these amateur guys? And
I think with the amateurs, it's obviously for them, it's all about them learning their craft, and they want to get out there and get as much experience as they can get before they turn professional, because no one will hold an amateur loss against them. But obviously, your pro record is what people will look at. Now, I know from speaking to with what we do now, from speaking to the coaches who obviously, 10, 15 years ago were going through the amateur scenes themselves, they talk about fighting in the back of working men's clubs, smoky rooms and all that kind of thing. So I know for them, having a show like us, and it's not, like I say, not just us, there is other good shows around, and having their lads on a show like ours, it's so much better for them because they're getting to experience a big show feel. But more importantly, I think than that, they're getting all the right safety. We use the best team of officials that we can use. We book all of our officials through MMA Officials, which was formerly run by Neil Hall, of course, and who's recently passed away. But before that, had worked in the UFC. I'll still be using his firm because, as far as I'm concerned, they're the best around. We have cutmen there, and I booked my cutman through Jamie Sheldon. Jamie Sheldon's been a cutman in the UFC. So again, I'm using the best that's available to me. We have an ambulance on site. We have medics on site. Never had to use the ambulance, but it's there in case it's needed, because we need to, if people do get injured, especially when you're dealing with, we have lads on from lads or ladies on from 16 years old. If any of them get injured, I need to make sure that they're looked after properly, and that's first and foremost. That's really important. So I think shows like ours are better for the amateurs because they can get matched fairly, but they can get put in the safest environment they can possibly be in when they compete in. Because we all know combat sport's dangerous, but there's certain things you can do to alleviate those dangers, and that's what we do. We make sure there's the right people there to look after people if they are hurt. But yeah, I think the amateur scene's gone massive, and I think the Worlds and the Euros of what's made it really big as well, with the amateurs going over there and doing really well. And of course, there was the young lad who was like 20-0 as an amateur, and now he's turned professional and he's fighting in Brave, and he's a phenomenal fighter. He's probably going to go really far.
yeah.
You look at Jake Hadley. Obviously, if you've seen his news recently, he had an amazing amateur career. He fought on Almighty as an amateur as well. Has gone on to become the EFC champion, the Cage Warriors champion, and now he's on Contender Series, which is absolutely amazing. But yeah, the amateurs is. I don't think anyone could ever have imagined how big the amateur scene has become. But having played my little bit of it and put the match together and seen how the fights play out, I'm not surprised it's as big as it is, because the fights are so exciting. They're so exciting to watch.
I mean, it's the hunger really of these guys and girls to come in and sort of make their name. And like you said, they're getting that big show experience, right? I mean, and as well as the cage time as well. And I sort of, every time I interview a fight, I love to ask them that, how was your amateur record? And it doesn't matter if they have about 20, 30 fights as a pro. I love to just ask them because it's always great to get a little intel about the experiences they've had, and it doesn't matter how many amateur fights you lost or won. They all say the same thing, that it's a learning curve. And would you say that amateurs, your mentality as an amateur, and being an amateur helps you sort of mature as well. If you're like you said, a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old coming in and starting to fight at a show like yours, doesn't that help you sort of mature the more fights you have at amateur as well, heading into professional? Because of course your mentality may not be there yet, and the more fights you have, you sort of get polished as it goes on.
I think, I mean, no matter how much training you do, how much time you put in the gym, and all of that, you can't actually beat being in there and competing. So it's all about getting that cage time, as they call it, and getting the experience and getting used to being in different situations, and going in there and losing and then working out why you lost and fixing that so you don't lose like that again. And that's what it is. It's a learning curve, isn't it? But the standard of the amateurs is absolutely crazy. I'll say that anyone who I speak to, I'll always say that. If you look at, we've talked about it already, but if you look at the George Staines versus Leon McCracken fight, that is an absolutely amazing matchup, regardless whether it's pro or amateur. I mean, that's probably one of the most anticipated fights on the regional UK scene, I would say, within since coming back, if you like. I think that's one of the fights people are most looking forward to, because they're both so talented. It's a fight you can't call.
They're crazy. Yeah, I know. I can imagine it. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to have George Staines on the show. Of course, he'll be defending the belt on that night as well.
Yeah.
But as a promoter, and as a guy who sort of one of the guys who runs the show, when you sort of make these fights and you sort of match make the fight, and I saw on there, I saw that it's pretty much on Facebook you post things like you need pro welterweight, so you need that amateur middleweight or anything like that. When you sort of pick a guy or a fighter that you want to put on the show, what's the thought process in a promoter's mind of matchmaking fights? Well, what's some of the things that really go into it?
So normally what I do is I'll normally message a lot of the gyms that I work with that are in that particular region. Yeah. And I'll just let them know we've got a show on this date. Please put forward any people who would like to compete on the card. I'll then look through and look at the names, and I'll see what I'm given. So when I'm matching, I'll look at a few different things, I suppose. Obviously, we've got to take into consideration whether the fighters are going to be able to promote the fight and sell tickets. I'm not going to say we don't, because we do. We have to. We don't get numbers through the doors. We don't get to do the next show, if you like. That's kind of how it works for us on the for most of us, I would say, on the UK scene. I'll put myself into that category. But then what I'm looking at then is I'm looking at the fighters' records. If the fighters I know, I can look at them and think, well, I'd love to see him fight him, because I think that'd be a really good fight. If some of the fighters I don't know so well, I'll look at the gyms and look at their records, and I'll try and match where I can. I'll try and match them with records that are similar. Like, for example, I had two guys come forward from gyms that I've worked with, and they're both 0-2. They're both lost 2 fights and fought twice. So there's the same weight. So I've put them two together, because for me that's a fair matchup. They're both 0-2. They're both similar. They've both got exactly the same record. I don't know who's going to win that fight. One of them's going to get their first win, obviously. But rather than putting an 0-2 versus a 2-0, I'd rather put an 0-2 versus an 0-2. And I try and match like that. There is names where there is like George Staines and Leon McCracken. That fight kind of made itself, because they're both such big names and they're both well known. In Liverpool, I've got Marlon Jones and Dan Mins. Again, Marlon Jones is defending his bantamweight title. Dan Mins is our former featherweight champ. He lost it over 5 rounds to George in a pretty close fight. He's dropping to 61. 2 great fighters, 2 great gyms. So again, that fight kind of made itself. So I look at quite a few things, really. When I put a fight together, I kind of look at it and say, is it a fight I'd like to watch? And that's what I look at. If I think I would like to watch it, then I think other people would like to watch it as well. And that's kind of what I aim for. And I don't want to watch a fight where there's a guy 6-1 versus a guy 0-3. That doesn't appeal to me.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I look at.
We see it on the we see it on the big stages now, like Bellator, or Bellator. The worst ones are doing that, like having mismatched fights. I mean, it's an absolute. Sometimes I'm just thinking, what the hell is the point? You have a guy that's 3-4 against 6-0. It's an absolute travesty. All right.
It's setting up the guy for a 7-0, isn't it? It's setting him up to it's padding the record basically. For years, boxing's been doing it, where you've had the boxers and they work their way up the rankings, and before you know it, they're 30-0. But they've basically been fighting guys that are much way below them level wise. I mean, one of the good things about the UFC is you do get fights put together that people want to see. You know, you get the big names versus the big names. They don't tend to pad records up to that stage, and that's one of the things I like. And I try not to do that as well. I try and match fairly. When I watch a fight, I don't want to know who's won the fight before the fight started. I want to watch that fight and not know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously there'll be fights I'll be watching that I'll have an idea who's going to win. I think he'll win. Doesn't mean that he will. And then when he doesn't, it's an even bigger shock. You know, yeah. But I don't want to watch a fight and know straight away this fight's going to be over in 30 seconds and that's it. That's not fun for me.
Because then there's going to be someone that's going to be just outclassed and dominant, and then the other fighter's just going to go off, and you're thinking, what the hell do I do next with it? You know,
I've watched fights before where they've had what they call the journeyman come in or the whatever, and they've gone down. They haven't even been hit properly, and they've taken a dive. And I don't get why people want to fight people like that. It's no one gets anything from it. You'll learn more from a hard fought loss than a win like that.
Yeah, I mean,
but that's just my opinion, and that's what I try and stay away from.
I mean, on the UK scene, what I've seen a lot, Ray, is that if they do have someone like that who's 7-1 or 8-1, they'll sort of have a battle-tested sort of veteran who's had about 30 fights. His record may not be the greatest, but he will have about 20, 30 fights under his belt. And what do you think about fights like those? Like, not really.
So when you say 20 or 30 fights under his belt, is he 0-20?
No, like say 15-10 or say something like.
Yeah, that's okay because they're fighting and they've won fights. It's the guys where you get guys that are 8-0 and they're fighting guys that are 0-20. Yeah. Guys that fight every Saturday and they turn up, they go in the cage, they last 30 seconds, they come out the cage, they get their money, they move on to the next show. That's what I don't like. And that happens.
When we speak about money, and from a promoter's point of view, like yourself, and the guy who runs a show and makes the show, and it's great that you hand out sort of bonuses to the amateurs as well, because it gives them something, to fight for. And I actually love that, because every amateur I speak to say, no, we don't get any money as an amateur, so I need to wait until I turn professional, and sort of that they rush their amateur career just for that stage, So in terms of money, Ray, and in professional MMA, it's such a big topic now. Do you feel that promoters do underpay fighters just in mixed martial arts in the UK or in the States?
I don't know, because the thing is, a fighter's only worth the money they can bring into the show. That's the harsh reality of it. Mm-hmm. So if I've got a guy fighting and he sells 0 tickets and he's a pro, I'm still going to pay him a wage, but in effect, he's brought no income into the show. So in theory, what's he actually worth? Doesn't matter how good you are. If no one wants to watch you fight, it doesn't matter. And you're talking at the highest level, which was Demetrius Johnson, probably one of the, up until recently, one of the best pound for pound fighters ever. I know he got knocked out recently, but up until when he was in the UFC, he looked untouchable. But the fact of the matter was, the UFC couldn't pay him anymore because he wasn't bringing the money in. He didn't get the numbers that needed on the pay-per-views. It doesn't matter how good he was, he didn't get the numbers in, so therefore they couldn't pay him more. Conor McGregor, for example, if he went pound for pound ranking, he's nowhere near as good as Demetrius Johnson. But the fact of the matter is, he generates much more interest. He generates the numbers, therefore he gets paid more money. That's what it comes down to. So a fighter's only really worth what they bring into a show. Now, I know, for example, for me, any fighter that fights on Almighty, they get paid ticket commission. So therefore, you want to earn money, sell tickets. The more you sell, the more you earn. If somebody sells 10 tickets, they get £10 a ticket. That's 100 quid. If you sell 100 tickets, £10 a ticket, that's 1,000 quid. 1,000 quid as an amateur. If you sell 100 tickets, that's pretty good money. But if you're going to turn up to a show and not sell any tickets, you can't expect to get money when you're not bringing any revenue in. Because again, it doesn't matter how good you are, a show won't run on the skill of an opponent or a skill of a fighter. They'll run on tickets sold and pay-per-views sold. Now, I know for a fact pay-per-views are not massive, so it's mainly going to be down to tickets. So I get what they're saying about that side to it, but they've got to put themselves out there and make it so that they're worth being. They're bringing in the numbers so that they can then say, look, I want more money because I'm going to bring this in.
So,
That's what it comes down to.
so in actual fact, there is no excuse or room to bitch and moan from a fighter's point of view, because it's only what you bring into the show, and they know these things. It's like you said, Conor McGregor. The reason why Dana White, sort of cashes him in as a sort of cash cow is that he brings those eyes and that money into the sport. So if we turn it onto the regional scene, it's sort of more imperative from a promoter's point of view, because you want fighters who do the work and bring the money into the show, as well as bring eyes in there too. And it sort of works both ways, right? I mean, you can't say anything.
That's the harsh reality of it, unfortunately. I wish it wasn't like that. I wish I could just put fights together and base it on the fact that I think they're both really, really good fighters. But if no one wants to watch that fight, then I'd rather put that spot to someone who's going to sell some tickets, because that's, unfortunately, we need numbers through the doors. If I don't get numbers through the doors, I can't keep doing shows. It's as simple as that. I don't even need to make loads of money. I just need to not lose money. That's what it comes down to. But if I'm making enough money, I can make sure I pay out the bonuses and things. I mean, those bonuses don't come out of my pocket. They come out of the ticket sales. I'll sell enough tickets on the night to be able to pay the bonuses. That's what it comes down to. I wish it wasn't a monetary thing, but shows cost a lot of money to put on. I'm not going to go into the exact figures on air, but we spend a lot of money on each show, and I know the promoters are doing the same. I know how much we spend, so I know how much roughly they would be spending as well. Before we take any profit, we need to get all that back, and then we can take a little bit of profit. And even if we don't make profit, we still have to make sure those people get paid. And that's off our own back then. So it's on us to make sure we do it right first. We're the ones, in effect, that are risking quite a lot to put on a show. Because if we've had a show before, we didn't make enough money, and we've had to take money out of loans and stuff to pay people for that particular show. That was a long time ago, but we did it and we made sure everyone was paid, because we've still got a reputation to uphold. But no one looks at that. They just look at promoters as bringing all this money in and not paying out, and that's not the case.
So the fair point is that it's a business perspective, right? Fighters need to take their own heads out their own asses and sort of look at it objectively. There's
always two sides to everything, and I would just say it's not as straightforward as the fighter's not getting paid what they think they're worth. You've got to bring the revenue in. We can't pay you if we've not got the money coming in. That's it in a nutshell. And anyone who is involved in the game properly, and the proper gyms, the ones that we work with, they know that. They know how it works. I've had gyms message me and send me fighters and say, I've got these fighters, but I wouldn't use him in Newcastle. I'd use him in Liverpool because he'll sell more tickets for you in Liverpool. So they understand how it works. That we all know. Anyone who's involved with MMA knows how it works when it comes to putting the shows on. If you want to fight on a show like Almighty Fighting Championship, for example, and be at a nice venue with all the right stuff that I've told you about already, and have the right production, and have the video, have it live on a pay-per-view, have the videos live on YouTube afterwards for you to be able to watch back again. For us to be able to do that, we need to sell tickets. So therefore, we need people that are going to go out there and are going to sell tickets.
100%, mate, and I totally understand that. It's all about just it's technically common sense. Yeah. If you're a fighter and you're actually involved in it, like you said, and it's not everyone who moans about these things. It's just certain people, and then I guess as they grow bigger and the stage grows bigger, I guess it will become a lot more prominent on social media or something like that.
It seems to be the people that get more seem to want more. So I think the people that are working up the rankings are quite happy to get what they're getting at the moment and just want to get their way up there. I mean, I have coaches that offer me fighters. They don't even ask about the purse. They just leave me to pay the purse, and I pay the purse. And not everyone does that, and that's fine. Some will negotiate, and that's fine as well. But it seems to me when you get up to the top, so like people that are in the UFC, for example, they're the ones that seem to want the more money because they've got to the top. But it's still going to be the same for them. They're still going to need to bring the money in. And I don't know all the ins and outs of what money they bring in, so I can't comment on that. No. But there's always two. I'd always say there's always two sides to a story.
Oh yeah, there is, mate, and that's the thing. You know what? It's all about and for real fans, who, and like you said, for people who just love watching great fights, you know, that's what it's all about for them, to come to these shows and watch them. You know, it's all about the atmosphere and introducing new fans, maybe to mixed martial arts. That's what it's all about. You know, and just leading up to August the 7th now, and you're only 2 months away. I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you, Ray, of course, for coming on the show, because of course it's been a long time coming, right?
Yeah, we've been interacting now for about 5 or 6 years with the MMA game that I run, and obviously you've been a big part of that for a while. You've won it as well one of the years. It's not an easy game to win. I've never won it, but it's a great game. It's good fun to do. I know you enjoy it, and we have good banter as well with everybody in the thread. So it's definitely a good laugh.
We do, mate. And of course, man, I wish you once again all the best of success. You got 5 shows coming up. I can't wait to watch them. And thank you very much, mate, for joining me once again.
My pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me on, Iron.
No problem at all, Ray. I have a